Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think if you're a normal retailer and you've just been coasting for years and you don't have the best prices and you don't have the greatest delivery mechanism, like obviously you're going to be challenged by the technology player who's coming in and who's making things more efficient. And I think that's often a mistake that advertisers make when they think about being on Google Ads. They think about, how do I raise my bid? How do I become more competitive with Amazon when it comes to outranking them? And they get frustrated because they can't bid the same prices that Amazon does.
Yeah.
And so they're like, it's impossible. Like, what's going on? And I think what's going on is your business may not be as efficient. You may not have negotiated as good shipping rates, right? Am I saying that it's easy to do? Absolutely not. Like, Amazon has some serious advantages, and I'm not, they may be unfair advantages, but that is the reality, right? So if you can't fix the underlying business differences, you may never be in a position to really compete if you're purely looking at just putting in a higher bid. My name is Fred Vallaeys. I'm the founder of Optmyzr, a co-founder of Optmyzr. And my claim to fame in the industry is that I joined Google really early on in 2002, so I was one of the first 500 employees there, and got to do some exciting things like built the AdWords editor, bought a company called Urchin that is now better known as Google Analytics, and was deeply involved in quality score. Left Google after 10 years, decided there were still some unsolved needs in the digital marketing space, so we built a company called Optmyzr, and we really help a lot of agencies and PPC experts and in-house teams just execute more efficiently on the strategies they know they should be doing through the tools that we build. Well, I mean, I think Google is building these tools for millions of advertisers, and so they always kind of build it to the lowest common denominator at some level, and then you have all of these PPC experts who attend shows like the one we're at today, and they really want to do very specific things, and they want to do that efficiently because they know that just produces better results. And Google sometimes makes it hard to do those things in an efficient manner, right? So that's a frustration, but it's also the opportunity, obviously, for me to go and build tools and scripts that make all of that easier. Well, I mean, so I think e-commerce is one of the fastest growing fields in PPC. So you're actually seeing tremendous growth in Google in terms of how much volume is being done on shopping ads. For US-based retailers, it's something like 80% of their clicks nowadays come from the shopping ad format. But it's also quite interesting to see that shift towards Amazon. So Amazon is actually starting to take very significant advertising dollars away from Google because they have a great marketplace too. And so that's one of these opportunities, like advertisers who are so used to working with Google and keyword and cost per click bidding, like how do they transition to Amazon, which is actually quite similar, right? But it's just like a bit of a shift that they have to do, and that's something we're working to make a lot easier. Yeah, so I think what you're saying is if you have a really strong brand, you don't need to be on Amazon because people will still find you and come to your site directly. If you're selling a more generic product, I mean, I think we're actually headed towards a world where brand is much more important, and maybe not so much from the Amazon perspective. I think that kind of plays into it, but more from the voice search perspective, right? If you think about the voice interaction and me, in my kitchen, I have a Google Home and I've got an Alexa device. And if I need a new product, I need to refill something, it's the thing that I've always been buying or the thing which brand I recognize, right? And so I think brand is becoming much more important and it's something you should invest in if you can. Yeah, I mean, so we see really interesting scenarios. Customers kind of, they know what's going on in their business and how that connects to results in PPC, but they always get sort of stuck that they can't do anything with it. And so one of my favorite examples is a customer who sort of figured out that depending on how many sizes were available for shoes that they sold, that would really impact the sales that they would get for that shoe. And that kind of makes sense, right, if you think about it. So if you're selling a shoe and you only have size 6 available in the US, or like size 35 in Europe, which is I think a little bit on the smaller side, well, you're not going to sell that many because most people might be looking for a size 40 or a size 10 in the United States. And so setting higher bids when you recognize that you have those correct sizes in stock, those are some success stories that we've seen. Yeah, I mean, 3 ideas, and so these are kind of specifically tied into what we believe at Optmyzr, but we believe that you need to have a grip structure, so groups of individual product, 1 SKU per product group, just because that enables you to do smarter bid management. And what that means is that if you have a finding one day about the example for size, you can actually act on that because each size is a different product group. Or if the next day you figure out, hey, it's we're getting into spring, and the big color this year is purple. Okay, we didn't know that last year, but now we can actually say, let's find all the purple products because they're each in 1 product group, and just increase the bids for those. Right, okay. So the grip structure is really important, and so that comes down to tip number 1 is structure your account so you can do this. And tip number 2 is find an analysis tool or do the analysis to actually start to get these insights. And then sort of the 3rd tip, which is maybe a more obvious one in shopping, but when you create a Google Ads product group structure and the products in your merchant feed are changing, it actually gets out of sync. Google Ads all of a sudden puts all of these new products in the bucket of everything else, and that's generic bids, that's not good performance, that's not controlled performance. So figure out a way to make sure that your Google Ads is always in sync with what you actually sell in your merchant feed. So kind of like inventory driven campaigns and inventory driven product groups. Go to where the customers are, right? So we're seeing all this money shifting towards Amazon. So if you're not doing that yet, and if you're still just on Google Ads, go ahead and shift over to Amazon as well. Maybe a little bit less relevant in Europe than it is in the United States, but Bing is also an important player. And the beauty about Bing is they copy exactly what Google does. So if you've got your Google merchant feed, and you got your Google product group structure, you can actually just copy that over into Bing and take advantage in the United States of about 30% new traffic on that. Why is customer retention important? Well, you paid a lot of money for that customer to come in the first place, so if you can retain them, that's kind of a big win, right? And so the other thing to think about here is what's the value you derive from your conversion. So if you think about, a $20 cost per acquisition for 1 conversion, that kind of limits you. But if you now start thinking about the lifetime value of that customer, all of a sudden maybe you can afford to pay $100 cost per acquisition, and that makes you far more competitive in the auction, and all of a sudden you can compete against the much bigger players. Yeah. As far as tips, I mean, follow up, right? Like set up a remarketing list. So once you've got that customer, don't just let them go, but remind them, hey, there's other products that people like you may have enjoyed buying. Maybe you sold a refrigerator and you remarket that, hey, it's been 2 years. Actually, that's kind of difficult to do because of the cookie length, but think about it in this way, right? But say, okay, maybe you need service at some point, then we can provide it as well. And so you build that ongoing relationship. Yeah, the decision between in-house and agency. A lot of my customers are agencies, a lot of my customers are in-house. So and we see quite a bit of shifting back and forth. Like the grass is always greener on the other side, they say. Ultimately, there's a lot of detailed work that needs to be done. I think you as the company need to think about the strategy you want to set and then find an agency that's able to implement that strategy. And that can also be a strategic partner, of course. Pick one that's using Optmyzr first of all. That allows them to do some pretty nifty stuff. But honestly, just sort of think about, first of all, are they very active in the space that you're in? Because the insights they've gained from other customers in your space most likely will allow them to start new experiments much better than if they were starting from scratch, right? Them knowing that the weather, for example, has an impact on your type of business, like that's a huge insight, and that's going to save you thousands of dollars from the start. So see what they've done with others in your space before, and then ask them technology questions, right? So the ideal agency is going to use their human brains to set the strategy to do things that humans are really good at, like building ads, thinking like a marketer, like how do we connect with our potential customer, but then also uses tools to really implement that at a huge scale and make sure that everything gets covered and nothing falls through the cracks. That in my book is a good agency. So I've actually got a book on Amazon right now about how to future-proof your career with all this AI that's coming out in PPC. And there's really a couple of core things here. Your job is going to change, but you're going to have an opportunity to be sort of the pilot of PPC, where you're always monitoring that things are going right. You can be the teacher, teaching the machines how to do a better job of running PPC. Or you can sort of be the doctor, the one who has empathy, who understands humans, who can sort of put all the pieces of machine learning together. Because keep in mind, a lot of the machine learning we see today is still very specific. One thing to fix budgets, one thing to fix bids, one thing to fix, maybe keyword targeting. You as the doctor sort of have to figure out what is the best medicine for the problem that the customer, the client has, and then how do you put those pieces together so they actually interact nicely together, and how do you explain it to the client, right? A lot of people are fearful of automation and AI. It's actually really good stuff, but you have to be able to put it in human terms.